Hey guys, I'm Jessie, and today we are going to be having a spoiler-free discussion all about Mistborn Era 2. So I have done one of these in the past, but that was before this baby came out. That was prior to the Lost Metal releasing and me reading it. So I wanted to do kind of an update to that video, should you read Mistborn Era 2 and why? So I am one of those people who absolutely loved Era 2. It is significantly different than Era 1, and I just had a fun time with it. To me, this book series was much more fun than Era 1. The stakes were a lot lower, but I really enjoyed it. So I say if you want to go into it, definitely do. But know that it is not as high stakes. It is not the same tonally, and it's quite different, even though we do have a lot of crossover. So you can go and watch my original video. I really have a lot of the same thoughts, but I kind of wanted to add in some new stuff specifically about how I felt after reading The Lost Metal. So in the third book in this series, we really start to get a lot more cosmere connections. We start to see a little bit more crossover and a lot more connection to Era 1. While through the rest of the series, the first two books, we do get Era 1 references. Obviously, it's their past, right? It's their history. It's their religions. But now we are really starting to get connections of the greater cosmere, especially in The Lost Metal. This book really opens up the Scadrial world. It opens it up to other planets in the universe, and we see a lot of people and mention a lot of people and places that we have seen in other cosmere books. We definitely have the presence of world hoppers in here. We have, a much stronger presence of Hoid in this book, and we just get to see more of these connections. And I think as somebody like myself who is a big fan of the connections, who's a fan of the cosmere, that this is one that you will really, really enjoy. I also think it really wraps up Era 2 well. And it leaves it open enough that that, when Era 3 finally comes out, there is going to be a lot of connections. I know one of the main kind of complaints that I've seen has been too much in-your-face connections. Like, why do we keep, they just keep getting bigger and bigger. But, to me, I've explained it like this before, this is very much like the MCU of fantasy universes. Because as we go on, the connections get bigger and bigger. And they just get more and more and more blatant and more crossover. So, honestly, I really love to see that. But I know some people I've seen have been, a little oh my god, it's too much. I don't think it's too much. So this one was probably my favorite book in the series. I know a lot of people don't even like Era 2 very much, but I do. But this one was definitely my favorite. We got some of my favorite characters. We got some throwbacks to some Era 1 characters, all the connections. And honestly, if you have read Tress of the Emerald Sea, which is Secret Project number 1, there's also quite a few connections in that book to this one. So that was really fun because I read them in tandem. So you can actually check out my Tress of the Emerald Sea spoiler-free review if you're interested in that, and watch the spoiler section to kind of talk about some of the connections that we found. But this one definitely had a lot more connections than the rest of the books. I will say, most of the people that I know that did not like the last book or have not liked the series as a whole specifically did not like Wayne. So if you've read any of them and you feel like you don't like Wayne, you probably will not like The Lost Metal. The Lost Metal has a lot of Wayne. It is Wayne heavy. And I liked that because I like Wayne. He is one of my favorite characters in this era. Him and Steris are my top tier Era 2 characters. And we get a lot of Wayne, and he is inappropriate, and he says the wrong thing at the wrong time. He's always making inappropriate jokes when he shouldn't be. But honestly, we all know a person like that. And I absolutely appreciate him. I love him because he's got this like dark past, but he uses humor to self-deprecate and just kind of make people forget and to make himself forget. And you find out a lot more about him and his character growth in this book, which I really appreciated. So yeah, if you don't like Wayne, you probably won't like this because this is Wayne heavy. And it's still the same rhetoric. It's the same kind of inappropriate joke, frat boy jokes, but it's really good. There is like a 5-6 year time jump from Bands of Mourning to Lost Metal as well. And I kind of liked that, honestly, because there wasn't a lot, I guess, that went on during the interim. And what we do need to know, we are told. But there is a time jump, so know that, because it kind of threw me a minute. I was like, wait, oh, okay. But overall, I thought it was a lot of fun. Era 2 really starts to connect to the cosmere as a whole. So I feel like, as I've said, if you are one that wants to get all the connections, that wants to really, know everything, if you're one of the people that, watches all the Marvel movies and the shows and all the stuff because you want to know every little thing, I definitely think Mistborn Era 2 is a must read. I also think it's one that needs to be read because there will be an Era 3 and an Era 4 somewhere in the future. And it kind of wouldn't make sense to just not read Era 2 because I am sure that events from this series are going to be important in the greater cosmere as well as on Scadrial in the future. So I'm very, very interested to see kind of where it goes, because I love in this series that we have seen technology advance. So I think that that's something that's going to continue, because obviously Era 1 was our traditional fantasy, right? Our swords and magic. And then we have Era 2, which is more, I guess, steampunk Wild West. So we have guns, but we also have the magic. And we're starting to have like trains and automobiles instead of carriages. And we get to see the technology progress. So in Era 3, I think we're going to be even more progressed. And then in Era 4, I believe is like almost sci-fi. Like, I think it's like space. So I'm really excited to see, what is down the line for Scadrial as well as the connections to the cosmere as a whole, because I know there's also crossover with this series and Stormlight, and I caught a lot of those, which I really, really enjoyed. There are so many connections within this story, so definitely pick it up and read it. Even if you're not the biggest fan, I think it's one that's really good to read if you're one of those people that wants all the connections for Stormlight and for, future cosmere books. So, I recommend it, but not everyone has the same reading taste as me. So yeah, overall, it was a good series. I really think Era 2 added a lot to the cosmere as a whole, and I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions if you've read the entirety of Era 2. Just let me know what you think of the cosmere connections, and what you think is going to be the ramifications of this era on the cosmere as a whole. All right, well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. My name is Jessie, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.